finally have a Hotchkiss rifle in the studio. It took a long time to get back to where I was some time ago. I had them and then I sold them, which is usually a stupid thing to do. But I have this one, and I have to tell you, try to buy one of these if you see them someplace. What an interesting rifle. So Winchester-Hotchkiss, you've probably seen them. And while I was looking at this rifle, I thought, or carbine, I better pull out some other rifles, because there's so many themes when you're a gun collector. Some of my collector friends are kind of historically fantastic, like they know dates of manufacture and places and historical figures, and I'm not so good. I'm probably more interested in the mechanics of the different actions, and I suppose that's influenced because I always had the idea that I would one day build a rifle or set up a small factory, which never happened, but that's okay, the dream lives on. But getting back to the Hotchkiss, so yeah, I mean, fantastic. It arrived, and as I said, I've had them before, but I never really studied them in the same way. So tubular feed, and you may not be able to make this out very well, but that's the end of the tubular magazine. You feed backwards here. Some people pick these up and they look for some place to feed here, or through the butt plate or the buttstock, or up here on the forend, but you feed backwards through here. It's that simple. And the side locking I find very interesting. So on here it says 1883, obvious meaning there, and you can see how the bolt handle is integral with the bolt body, and here's your locking right there on the side. And when you see that, if you're familiar with firearms, it probably reminds you of a Lee Enfield, at least it does me. Before I set this one down though, this is a safety and this is a magazine interrupt, which are effective tools in the battlefield for obvious reasons. This is a modified rifle. I think it started out actually as a rifle, and then somebody turned it into a carbine, and it handles very well. Everything's excellent about it. Again, I'm very lucky sometimes, and the bore is superb. And this is a little bit like an 03 Springfield, the knob at the end of the bolt. Anyhow, if you can keep that image in mind, how this locks, and then let's take a look at the Mauser over here. Too bad we can't show them all at the same time, but you can see it's not so different. The Mauser has the locking here, and it also has locking lugs on the front, which the Hotchkiss does not. In case you don't know, the Hotchkiss is in 4570, and that's what the muzzle view looks like. So you can see this is not a caliber to be toyed with. Just as effective today as it was back then. And we may have looked at trapdoor Springfields. I think we had a Krag in here, but the Hotchkiss is harder to find in any kind of condition, and this one happens to be very good, except that it's modified and it has the ladder sight for long range and then the slider for shorter ranges. But getting back to the Mauser, you can see the locking system here, and the Lee Enfield just didn't bother with the front locking lug. And yeah, so sort of rings bells. And then I thought, well, since I take out a Mauser, I may as well show you this interesting rifle, which is the Remington Lee. And I mean, I don't get the dates exactly correct, but it's all around the same time, so 1883 and onward. And when the Remington Lee came out, I'm not sure, but you can see again, this turned into the Lee Enfield eventually. I think the inventor was James Paris Lee. I like this model the best. This one took me years to find. These are around in 30-40 Krag, 30-30 Winchester. I showed you my 30-30 a while ago. But this one is in the weirdest caliber of all. It's actually 6mm Lee Navy, but on this gun it's stamped, I think, 236. And again, I was fortunate with the bore. Ammunition disappeared long ago, and you may know the 6mm Lee Navy round from the military rifle, which I don't have, or else it would be on the table right now. But getting back to the action, yes, we have the side locking, and then this exceptional rifle has the front locking as well. And when I look at the machining and the intelligence of actions, this one is always amazing to me. So well made. So a Remington Lee, if you came across one, and you must see the heritage of the Lee Enfield here, but the slanted magazine, of course the slant is because the rim cartridges pile up on one another and the cartridge has a taper to it. I don't have the ammunition right now, or else I would show it to you. So that's the Remington Lee, and I should show you lastly this amazing sporter. I'll make a video on this alone. This is an 1888, and I have to catch myself because for years I used to say 1888 Mauser, but I have a like kind of an obsessed Mauser collector friend, and he said, stop calling it a Mauser because it's a commission rifle. It's an 1888. In fact, Mauser was one of the few manufacturers that didn't make this rifle. Nevertheless, when you handle it, it somehow reminds you of a Mauser. I don't know, I guess maybe all bolt actions do. But you can see the bolt handle is forward, but it does have forward locking lugs. And as you can see, there is no locking of the bolt handle. I suppose the bolt handle would stop the bolt from moving backwards if the lugs fail, which I've never heard of. But this is a very slick and excellent rifle. But 1888 commission rifle, and no side locking lug integral with the bolt handle. And I think that gives you an idea of what I wanted to show you. Probably the beefiest one, and certainly the best known, I would think, these days especially, partly because of video games, is the Mauser. And their durability and accuracy is well established. And I like them. I mean, it's a bit like handling a broom. It's quite a long rifle, but you don't have to get this model. There are carbines available. The Polish, I think model 44, is one of the best made Mausers. And then there are Russian carbines, and there are Finnish made Mausers, and all kinds. There are people that just specialize in knowing what they're talking about with Mausers, which I don't. But getting back to the Hotchkiss, as far as collectability, I've learned a little bit more since I acquired this one. And as I probably said a few minutes ago, if you can buy one of these in any condition, it's worth owning. I made a bunch of dummy cartridges and everything works the way it should. It's very slick, and there's something about this shaping, the way they've milled out the sides of the action, that reminds me of Winchester lever actions. That nothing happens by coincidence in manufacturing, so they probably did that on purpose, maybe to evoke recollections of the Winchester line. And I read a little bit of history, but there's so much more available. They wanted this to be used by the military and had limited success with it, but it has some, let's say, awkward features, and I'll flip it around. I probably move the guns too much for the photographer, but I thought I should have this on the channel because it does come up. People talk about the Hotchkiss. Extremely well made, very durable rifle or carbine, and that's probably all I can share with you. If you're looking for them, as usual, look for cracks in the tang area, because they always forget to relieve the back of the tang, which you can do with a Dremel to prevent any cracking. This one does have a hairline crack, but it looks very stable, and I'll often encounter that. This rifle was properly relieved, the Remington Lee, so otherwise the action becomes like a wedge splitting the stock. In any event, it took me a while to get here, and I'm happy that I was able to show all four of these at one time. And yeah, this will go in the vault. We'll take it shooting when I get set up better for that. It's just this nasty business of not having enough time. That's probably it for today. Please join me on Patreon. You know the story I tell at the end of almost every video. And join me on Instagram as well. And don't forget to subscribe, that's important. And altogether, I think I've put together about a dozen new videos with some guns you probably have never seen before. This one, like I said too many times, hard to come by. And it's not a thick, heavy, monstrous military action. This actually has a daintiness to it, which you'd have to have it in hand to know what I'm talking about. And because the bore is so big, it's not muzzle heavy, which is a feature of the big bores. Not much steel because it's mostly whole. Anyhow, thanks again for watching, and we'll see you on the next video.